All right. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. Thank you so much for being here today. I do want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so we'll be sharing the recording with everyone afterwards. And then also in the chat section, there's a place for you to send some messages. If you have any questions whatsoever during the webinar, please send a message there, and I'll do my best to address them during the webinar. And so thank you for your time this morning. I know that, it's just the beginning of the year, but one of the things I wanted to do today is actually talk about how to achieve personal goals. It's something that's top of mind for me. I'm thinking about my goals. I'm thinking about what I want to achieve this year. And so therefore, I figured it'd be a very appropriate topic to address as we start this year strong. So with that, we'll get started. And so you should be able to see my screen. And so I want to talk about the goals for today, help you understand the basics of Matrix. I will make the assumption that the vast majority of you are relatively new to Matrix, and so I'll be talking about the basics of the fundamentals behind the philosophy of Matrix, how to use the application, and so forth. But then the second part that's different from my other webinars is I'll be talking a little bit more about the personal aspect of Matrix, because I think that at the end of the day, it boils down to you as an individuals, as your goals with, whatever goals that you have for this year, what are the things you want to achieve? How do we actually put that into Matrix and use it to ensure that we actually meet those goals that we want to achieve? And then lastly, I want to talk about some tips and tricks using Matrix, and of course, any experience that I have in terms of using the system. I've talked to thousands of customers over the year, and so I've seen sort of every single possible challenges that's out there when it comes to prioritization and task management. So feel free to ask me questions if there's anything along the way. So one of the things I want to talk about first is the challenges that our customer face. And so one of the things that I've seen over and over again is that team members have trouble understanding what's priority right now. And it is so fascinating because more so than ever before, we have a lot of software out there, but at the same time, you have no idea what your teammates are working on. What are the things that they consider important? And then at the same time, they may not know what are the things you consider important. And so this lack of transparency makes it particularly challenging for organizations that are actually trying to be more productive. How could you prioritize if you don't know the priorities of all the individuals across your organization? And then second of all, because we're responsible for so many different aspects of so many different projects nowadays, it's difficult to keep track on the status of work across these areas of responsibilities. I don't think you ever really have specialists anymore. In fact, everyone has to be in charge of so many different competing so many different projects with competing priorities, right? We have only limited time. And so I think understanding where things stand and how they all fit together is really, really challenging. And then lastly, emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. One of the things I've seen over and over again is that people are struggling with tying everything together. You're getting an email from somebody, and then you also get a message from them via Teams, and then you get a text message, and then you see them in the hallway. And how do you bring all this together so then you have one central place to track all the tasks that you have to do? And so one of the things that we see over and over again why people come to Matrix is that they struggle with email prioritization. And so hopefully I'll be able to show you how to prioritize your emails so that you can actually be on top of the most critical emails. So what is Matrix? It's a comprehensive email priority and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct efficient meetings, and get real-time status updates on critical projects and priorities. So I want to emphasize again that Matrix is actually a communication tool. What it does is it helps you understand what are your priorities at any point in time, and then not only able to know what your personal priorities are, but also all your team members' priorities. So how does Matrix help with those three challenges that I first brought up? One, we use what's called the 4-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. So I'll go into the details on the 4-quadrant approach, but it makes it very, very visual and very easy to be able to see what are the things you should focus on. And so that aspect, I think, is what differentiates Matrix from everything else. Secondly, Matrix provide views such as the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And context is really important because when you're working on something, it might be for a project, but it might also be for a person, as in like a client or your manager, et cetera. So how do you understand what are the things I need to work on for each of those contexts. And so Party Matrix gives you the different ways to see that information across all of your projects. And then lastly, Party Matrix is probably the deepest integrated solution in the Microsoft Teams and Outlook ecosystem. And so if you do use Outlook or Teams, Party Matrix actually integrates so well in that it's a no-brainer in terms of using the system. It is not required to use Party Matrix to have Microsoft, to be part of Microsoft ecosystem, but Party Matrix helps with that context switching if you do use that. So what makes Party Matrix better? It's a Microsoft 365 security certified solution, and we're the only one, as far as I know, that's certified on the Mac app, on the web app, the Microsoft Teams app, as well as the Outlook app. And one of the things that we're doing and we're investing more time into is actually using AI to help you achieve your goals. This is an area of work that we're still thinking about and trying to ensure that we use AI sort of responsibly, but also at the same time actually make it productive, because there's just so many things that it can do. And so how do we help you achieve those goals? And this is an open conversation we want to have with you. What I like about Party Matrix too, is that it provides this people-centric collaboration. And so one of the things I want to show you is what we call the one-on-one view, where you can actually see what are the things you have to do for your manager, or what are the things your direct reports have to do for you, regardless of the projects, regardless of whether it came from emails or whether it came from like a personal goals, et cetera. So how do you actually see everything in one central place and ensure that you're working on the right things? And then finally, Party Matrix is available as a standard SaaS solution, which is what I'll be showing you. But also, if your organization is looking for a HIPAA compliant solution or one that's hosted on Azure Government Cloud, we also have those. So what makes Party Matrix effective is that it helps you determine what you need to do now, and then what you need to do later, as in after you're done with the things you have to do now, and then what are the things you delegate. At the end of the day, Party Matrix offers the one place where everyone within your team, your organization can go to know what needs to be done. And that is so important. And I want to emphasize that's why Party Matrix is effective. And so if you're using Party Matrix and you're able to do this, then you know that you're using Party Matrix correctly. And if you're not able to do this, then you know what are the things you should do in order to be more effective at using Party Matrix. So hopefully, I want to let this sink in a little bit. Just try your best to think that Party Matrix, the goal of all of this is that it provides the one place to see everything. So let's talk about the fundamental behind Party Matrix. And so there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. What I really like about this quote is that instead of thinking about everything we have to do as a one long list, what happens is if you take all the tasks that you have to do and think whether or not this is important, and then secondly, whether or not it is urgent. If it's something that's important and urgent, then probably something that you want to tackle right away, right? That's the fires you have to fight. If it's something that's important and not urgent, that's the stuff that you have to start thinking about and planning for. And then interestingly, the thing that are urgent but not important, those are the things that come and bother us all the time, right? It's that last email that came in. It's someone knocking on your door to tell you something that is actually not really instrumental to fulfilling your goals, but they go in and they break your attention and so forth. And so one thing that's really interesting is if we don't go and separate all the things we have to do into these different dimensions, then we're always going to be working on the things that are urgent, the things that are last in, right? That becomes a last in, first out mentality. So instead of doing that, what happens is you want to go and take everything that you have to do and split it into those 4 buckets. The important and urgent goes to the do now. The important but not urgent goes to the plan. The important but not urgent, the urgent but not important are the things perhaps you could delegate to others. And then instead of having ever track anything that's not important and not urgent, instead you have the inbox, which is where you have everything that you want to do, but you don't know where they fit within the bigger picture. So one of my recommendations as you use Party Matrix, and as you think about how to manage your task and so forth, always be considerate of where you're putting your task. So then if someone were to look at your matrix, they know exactly what it is that's on your list and what you consider be priority. And one exercise that I really like to ask users to do and customers to do is that, take out a piece of paper and start writing down everything that you want to achieve this year or this coming quarter. And then from there, split it into these 2x2 matrix. You don't even have to use Pretty Matrix. You just have to go and put it onto a piece of paper. And then ask your coworkers and your teammates and your managers and the people you work with all the time to do the exact same exercise, then start comparing notes. And that's where the magic happens with Pretty Matrix. What happens is that Matrix surfaces up all these disagreements with respect to prioritization. Now, if you go and you do this exercise and everyone is in a complete agreement, like, you compare notes with your manager and your direct reports, and it all says the exact same thing, you guys are golden. In fact, that would also make you a unicorn, because I've rarely seen that to be the case. But instead, what happens is when you do this exercise and you start comparing notes, you'll realize that, wait a minute, I thought something was important, but my coworker didn't, and then vice versa, right? And so when you have a conversation on what it is you need to work on, it is so easy to be able to go and talk about the things that you disagree on. And that's the magic of Pretty Matrix. It forces you to create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the very beginning. The last thing you want to do is to work on something that's not important and then spend all your time and effort in working on that. And then 3 months from now, when you go and you have, alignment checkup, you realize, wait a minute, I've been working on the wrong things. And that wasted effort is the destroyer of our productivity. And so I strongly encourage you to do this exercise, strongly encourage you to think about your priorities and then compare notes with your coworkers. Again, if you got nothing else from this webinar, and if you did this exercise, even if you don't use Pretty Matrix, I think you will find that your 2024 will be a lot more productive in terms of time management. So I do want to mention that the webinars are recorded and we post them on the website, affluence.com/webinars. I also want to say that, please reach out to us if you have any feedback or any questions. We want to engage with you. We want to talk to you about your challenges and then see how Pretty Matrix can adapt to those challenges. And so with that, I'm actually going to jump over to the application and show you how to use Pretty Matrix, how to actually apply this. Okay, so now I have my Pretty Matrix open. So this happens to be the web app. And so if you use Pretty Matrix, you'll know that, Pretty Matrix works on pretty much every single platform out there. We have web app, Mac app, desktop app, Microsoft Teams app, Outlook app, mobile apps, etc. So here I happen to have the web app open. As you can see, I have my list of projects on the left-hand side. And so you can think of projects as anything from area of responsibilities, right? These are the things you're responsible for. So for example, if you're in charge of a marketing team, you might have a project that would be marketing and called marketing, and that's all your goals for this quarter or this year. The project might also be an initiative. So for example, let's say if you're in manufacturing and one of your initiatives is actually to upgrade all your equipment in order to streamline your efficiency, then you might have a project that says upgrade equipment for, Q1 2024, something like that. And then, of course, on a more personal level, you might have a project that's for your goals for this year. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about, how to show you to do that. But as you can see with my list of projects here, in the middle is the 4 quadrants. And so that's front and center in everything that we do in Pretty Matrix. Again, the goal is not to have things in a list. If you have things in a list, where do you start? At the top or at the bottom, right? Or some random thing in the middle. So that doesn't work. And so instead, when you think about putting tasks in Pretty Matrix, you have to decide where do they belong. And if you don't know, then you may put them in quadrant 4, down here. And then afterwards, start moving them around to the appropriate quadrants as you're prioritizing your task. One of the things that I think is actually, I've seen some great success with our customers is that they'll go and they'll create a project that track their team priorities, right? And so if you're a manager and you have, let's say 5 or 6 direct reports or something like that, and you have a project and you track all your priorities, and then guess what? When you have a meeting on a weekly basis, the staff meeting, project Pretty Matrix onto the big screen, and now you can walk through those priorities and only focus your attention on the top part of the matrix, right? The things that are important and urgent and the things that are important and not urgent. And then you're able to save your time and not waste it talking about things that don't matter. So those are some of the things that I think are very make it very successful in terms of task management. Okay, so now I have this matrix, and then what happens is, let's say I want to add a task. So I'm going to go ahead and add a task and say follow up with webinar participants. Okay, and so this is how you create a task inside Party Matrix. But the second thing I can do is actually I can put the due date directly in here. So I can say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. So what happens is with Party Matrix, the moment I create that task, on the right-hand side, I see what's called the item details. So with the item details, I'm actually able to add additional information around this task. So here's the task name, here's the project it belongs in, and let's say this is something that's important, I can star it. And when I star it, it pops to the top of the list, and then I can also add an icon to it. So let's just say, if I do this icon, I'll do an email icon here. And then down here, I have owner. For example, I might want to delegate it to somebody else. I can do that directly from here. There's progress, efforts, reminders, and due dates. And so as you can see, because I said due tomorrow at 2 p.m., Party Matrix automatically interpret that using natural language. And so it sets a due date for me. But here's the difference between due date and reminders. And let's just say you have something that's due in 2 weeks. But if you wait for 2 weeks to get started, maybe you're not going to be able to get that done because, maybe that task takes several days. So instead, what you also want to do is you want to actually set a reminder so that it pops to the top of your list over the next 2 weeks, so then you remember to actually work on them. So let me show you how I do that. So let's just say this is due tomorrow at 2 p.m. and so I'm going to say remind me in 3 hours. Okay, so when I do that, Party Matrix will actually pop it to the top of my list in 3 hours. So then it's top of mind for me to actually go and actually work on it in order to follow up with the webinar participants, for example. Below that, I have chats, notes, and resources. The chat is actually, you can think of the chat as a history of all the changes that I make, but it's also a place where I can have a conversation with my coworkers around this task. So let's say that I do assign this to Eugenia. I can say, hey, make sure to follow up with the webinar participants. And so when I do something like that, Eugenia can actually go and see that conversation and respond to it. And so you probably use something like Microsoft Teams or Slack or some chat software, collaboration software within your organization, and you know that you talk about all sorts of stuff. The problem in general is that context is not there, right? So you might have a conversation with your manager on 5 different topics inside your chat. And then guess what? In 6 months or in 6 months when you need to review on all those conversations you had, it's impossible because you've talked about all sorts of stuff in your chat. So instead, Party Matrix provide this chat within the context of the task. And so what's nice about it is that it's specific to this task. And then when you invite somebody else that's new to the project and they need to see the context and they need to see the decisions made and the changes made, they can see that in the chat section. So I love using the chat section. I use it all the time in order to ensure that we have a conversation within that context. I don't like talking about tasks outside of context because that makes it very difficult to bring others in. And then the other thing is, one of the tips that I have for using Party Matrix is always set due dates and always set reminders. That's my goal with everything that I put into the system. I set a due date, and so that due date tells me, okay, I need to make sure that I actually respond or update to this task. And then I always set reminders. And not only that, I set recurring reminders. So let me give you an example. Let's say if I need to follow up with the customer in a month, what I would do is I would say, I will give you an example here, due in 1 month, right? And then what I would also do in Party Matrix is I'll say, remind me weekly. And again, this is literally what I always do on a daily basis. And now on a weekly basis, I get a ping from Party Matrix in my home view that tells me, hey, I need to follow up with this customer. And I'll do that over and over again for every single one of my important tasks. The note section in Party Matrix is where you can put subtasks as well as additional information around the task itself. It is not intended to be rich text and all that. You have your Microsoft Word, you have your Google Docs and so forth. You can link those into Party Matrix under the resources section. So instead, the notes inside, a task is just additional metadata. Maybe you want to describe what the task is, but you can also create subtasks here. And then the resources section is where you can attach documents, even emails. That's actually a really neat capability inside Matrix, the ability to attach emails to existing tasks. So how many times have you had, tasks that are associated with an email that a client sent you, right? And so with Matrix, you can actually do that. And so I'll be showing our email integration shortly. So also you can actually link existing tasks together with Matrix. And so when you do that, you can actually build dependencies and have Gantt charts created automatically for you. So Matrix gives you the flexibility to incorporate all sorts of resources into the task itself. So that's pretty much it on an item detail basis. And when I created this task, I put it down here, and guess what? It's just all drag and drop in terms of prioritization. And so imagine now when I have a project like this and a coworker comes in here and looks at this project, they can see exactly what my priorities are. And then if we have disagreement, we can have that really important conversation. And then the other thing I also like to do is I also like to resize the quadrants. So let's just say, when I start my day, I want to focus just on the Q1 stuff. I would resize this, and now you see how I can have more real estate dedicated to my quadrant 1. So now let's talk about creating projects, as we were just talking about creating tasks. So since today's webinar is really around managing your goals for 2024, let me show you how I would approach managing my goals for this year. So I'm going to go click on projects. I'm going to go show all projects, and now choose add project. Now, when you add a project in Matrix, you get several choices. The first is you can always do a blank project. A blank project means it's a basic Matrix. The project have nothing in them. But we also have templates available for you. And so when you get a chance, you can go to here and explore the different templates that we have. And it's actually customizing Matrix to your specific workflow. And then Matrix also lets you create your own workflow templates. And so if you become more advanced with Matrix, you can actually build out your own Matrix with custom quadrant names, custom tasks, and so forth, and then save that as a template. So then when you launch a new project in Matrix, you can actually use one of those templates. And then, of course, we have Create with AI, which allows you to turn a goal into a series of tasks. And so when you use Matrix, definitely check out this feature. So maybe your goal could be how to get a promotion in 2024, right? You could actually type that here, and our system will actually build out some suggested tasks for you in order for you to achieve that goal. But I'm going to go ahead and choose a blank project because I want a project that just tracks some of the stuff that I want to do this year. So goals for 2024, okay? And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and choose a color. I'll go add project. So now when I do this, you see that I have, again, my list of project on the left-hand side, and then I have my quadrant in the middle. And instead of item details on the right-hand side, I have the project details. So the project details list my project name. I can also start this project. So when I start the project, you see how it jumps to my the top of my list here. That allows me to get to this project very, very easily. And so I truly recommend that you have, if you have like 5 or 6 projects or something like that, have 2 or 3 starred ones. And so that allows you to ensure that, it's always on the top of your list, and then you're always looking at them. And then within the project details, I can invite additional team members. Since this is my personal project, I might not want to invite anybody. And so here, the quadrant names. And so here it uses the Eisenhower Matrix, but I'm going to go ahead and change it. So instead of using do now, I'm going to say my long-term goals. And then here I'm going to do my short-term goals. And then I'm going to say, instead of the quadrant 3 delegating, I said, things I will not do, and then ideas. Okay, so now instead of actually using the Eisenhower matrix, I've just customized this entire matrix to be more appropriate for my goals for 2024. So for example, my short-term goal might be to read a self-help book every month. Okay, so imagine if I wanted to create a task or something like that. And so the idea here is that when you work on creating a project for managing your goals in 2024, put down things that you want to achieve. And then what I'll do is I'm going to go and do a remind me monthly here in the chat section. So now on a monthly basis, I'll automatically get a reminder to make sure that I'm actually going to work on this goal. So as you know, the problem that we have typically when we set our goals is we're very ambitious at the beginning of the year because we want to do all these things and so forth. But then what happens? What happens is that you have so many things going on, you start forgetting what those goals are. So the way it works with Party Matrix is when you create that task, set that reminder. So when you get that ping on a monthly basis around achieving whatever it is you want to achieve, it will be extremely helpful to help you achieve your goal, right? And then the second is on the long-term goals. That's where you create, again, some of the things that really matters to you, and then set a constant reminder. So I recommend that if you do create a project for goals for 2024, make sure that you set a reminder, on a recurring reminder, in fact. So then, you actually will go back to it and you'll think about it. Now down here, things I will not do. This is just something that I've discovered on my own when I work on my goals. I actually build out documentations on the things I want to do, and then also the things I don't want to do. And that revelation is, to me, very helpful because it helps me understand the dimensions of how I think about my work. And so trying to think if I can give you an example. But for example, when I think about the things I want to do, I always think about what are the things I don't want to do that's related to that. And so as you work on your goals, I recommend that you think of it as what I call anti-goals, right? And so that could just be when you want to be a more productive or more positive person, right? Then you also want to say, I don't want to be involved in gossip, as an example. And then finally, I always have an idea section. What I like about the idea section is it allows me to track all the things I want to do. And then I don't have the pressure of actually committing to it, but it's just all my thoughts and so forth. And then from there, I can actually drag it to the appropriate goals as needed. So my recommendation for this is to have this information in there, go back to the chat section and every month update it, right? So for example, if I do have this read a self-help book every month on a monthly basis, when this reminder comes up, I'll go in here and I'll type an update. And, I could even say, didn't find a book this month, got to find a book next month, right? But then I want to track that, and Party Matrix will give you a history of all of that. And so over the course of a year, you can go back and actually review it, and you'll find that this will be extremely helpful for you to achieve those short-term and long-term goals. Okay, now I'm going to switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. Let's go back to actually thinking about how to use Party Matrix to make sure that you don't drop any important emails this year. So this is probably the number one reason why customer comes to Party Matrix, which is they struggle with email prioritization. And this happens to me too. I get a couple hundred emails a day. So it's very, very difficult for me to go and prioritize all of them. Now, granted, if you can flag an email, right, and you can even set reminders for emails nowadays. The problem is if I have 5 flag emails, it works fine. But if I have 50 flag emails or 100 flag emails, I start losing track of them too. So with Party Matrix, you're able to install the Party Matrix extension. So if you have Outlook, all you have to do is go to the App Store here and then click on Add Apps and then search for Party Matrix. Now, when you add Party Matrix, you'll see 3 options. We have a HIPAA solution, a government solution, and then the blue one is our standard solution. Typically, vast majority of people use that. And so here, I have it installed. So then when I have an email that comes in, and let's just say it's a very important email, I can just click on this option and then I choose Prioritize Email. So what happens when I prioritize an email is that I can actually, this option to capture email comes up, and then I can decide what project it goes in. I can assign it to a person. I can decide what quadrant it goes in, right? So for example, here, let's see here, my goals for 2024, where is it? There's goal for 2024. And so then I can actually choose what quadrant it goes in. I can set a due date, and then I click capture email. So as you can see, the moment I click capture email, the right-hand side becomes the item details. It's exactly like the web app. And now instead of just flagging an email or setting a reminder, I can do all sorts of stuff to it. I can decide what project it goes in. Again, I can change it, add owners. delegate it to somebody else. I can add progress. I can add subtask. And then not only that, what happens is that email is uploaded into the resources section when I go back to my Party Matrix task. And so this EML file is accessible to my coworkers, right? So if they're on another computer and they can actually open up the EML file and be able to respond to the customer. So the second thing about Party Matrix email integration that makes it unique is the ability to attach email to existing tasks. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you work with an external client, right? And that client sends you a follow-up email. Now you already have an email as a task for them. So instead of actually just creating a new task, what you want to do is you want to attach that email to an existing task. So Party Matrix is the only software solution that I'm aware of that lets you do this very easily. So you go to apps here, and you choose Party Matrix, and then you choose Open Party Matrix. Now, when I do something like that, what happens is my Party Matrix list of items will show up here, and then from here, I can actually choose a task that I have. So actually, for some reason, mine doesn't show up here, but then I can actually hover over an existing task and attach this task to that item. And so this allows me to actually attach multiple emails and have, my documentation, my files, presentation, etc., all attached to the same task. So I'm going to jump back to my Party Matrix here, and so you can see how that email that I created is here inside my Party Matrix. And then if I go to the resources section, you see that there's an email file. So one of the things that I like to do all the time is when I'm on the go, for example, and then I get an email that I see on my phone, and I want to prioritize that email, what I can do is I can actually go to my inbox here. I capture my secret inbox address. And so when you use Party Matrix, all of you have a secret inbox address. And when an email is sent to that secret inbox address, it creates a task for you. So what I do is I save the secret inbox address as a contact. And so whenever I get an email, I forward it into my Party Matrix. And then I would say, due tomorrow, or, remind me daily or something like that. And now it creates a task for me when I'm out and about. And, for those who work on customer sites, where you might be on the road all the time, this capability is so powerful in terms of prioritizing your emails. And then I'm also going to switch gear a little bit and talk about Microsoft Teams. Again, Microsoft Teams is not required to use Party Matrix, but if you do use Microsoft Teams and Outlook, definitely install it. And so to install Party Matrix for Outlook, Party Matrix for Teams, you go to the App Store here, search for Party Matrix. And then when you do install it, it'll show up here on the left side. My recommendation is you right-click on this and then choose Pin. And when you pin it, Party Matrix is always here on your left-hand side, and you're able to see exactly you're able to access Party Matrix so much more quickly. And so as you can see, when I open Party Matrix on Teams, it looks exactly like my web app, right? I have a project here. My goals for 2024 is synced over automatically. I see all my goals and so forth. And so when you work with multiple people and you have multiple projects and you have a lot of different goals and so forth, they can be accessing the app inside Teams. You can be accessing the app on the web app. Somebody else can be accessing the app on mobile, and you all see the same thing. And that's how Party Matrix create that alignment. And again, the quadrant makes it so easy to have a visual way to see what the priorities are. So that's what I find extremely helpful with the system. Now, I'm not going to walk through the ability to add tasks here because it's all the same, but let me show you some other things that actually is very helpful with Party Matrix, which is the ability to access different views. So we talked about earlier the quadrant here, but imagine if you have more tasks, right? So for example, I open another project here where I have a lot more tasks in one central place. So I can actually switch views to, for example, the list view, show all my tasks. But what this is really helpful for is actually finding tasks that are overdue. So when I go to the list view, I can actually sort by due dates or modified date, etc., or by owners. And so I can see what are all the things that people are responsible for. Now, I know that, while the four quadrant Eisenhower Matrix is our recommended approach, but as you can see that you can actually change the quadrant names. So then, maybe the quadrant 4 doesn't mean low priority. It just has a different attribute to it. And so when you go to this view, you can sort by those quadrants and be able to see exactly what are the things that are overdue in the list form. And then, of course, you have the calendar view, which takes all the tasks that have due dates and put it in the calendar. And then you have the Gantt chart views. And so when you have tasks that are dependent on each other, as you can see here, you can actually build dependencies and all that inside Matrix and link them together and be able to access the tasks directly from here. And so one of the nice thing about this is it's a no-brainer. It's so easy to create Gantt chart. And so if you're a project manager and you need to create a Gantt chart to see, the flow of things over the next 3 months or something like that, Matrix just built this out automatically when you have due dates. Here's a couple of things that makes Matrix unique inside Teams. So if you do use Teams, and let's say you go to a chat with somebody, right? Let's say your manager that you talk to all the time, right? What happens is you can go to the PM one-on-one view and able to see all the things you have in common with your manager. And so as you can see, I go to the one-on-one view here. I have my coworker selected. I can see all the tasks I have in common with her across all of my Matrix. This is what makes Matrix so powerful when it comes to meetings. And so when you have that one-on-one meeting with somebody, instead of having to open Matrix, go through each project, talk about the things that you guys have in common, you just open this view and all of that is aggregated for you directly here. And what's neat is that you can see all the tasks that are overdue as well, right? And all the star tasks pop to the top. And so when you star something, Matrix makes it so convenient for you to get to it. And so now your meeting can become so much more productive because you talk about the most important things. And then you can look at all the things that are overdue. And then from there, either change the due date or reprioritize, right? And then you're able to actually create tasks directly from here too. You don't even have to open Matrix at all. You just click on add shared task. And when you do, you can create the task. You can choose the project it goes in. And the neat thing is it automatically assigns to the other person and it adds you as a follower. So what that means is when that task gets updated, you're automatically notified. Now to get to the one-on-one view, all you have to do is click on plus here, choose Matrix, and then choose the one-on-one view. So I recommend that if you have multiple coworkers that you work with, or again, if you're managing 5 or 6 people or something like that, add the one-on-one view for every single one of your coworker, and then select them here. And now with Matrix, you're able to see all the things that they're working on that related to you. And as you can see, if I go to the chat with somebody, there's a bunch of things I can do here as well. I can actually attach Matrix tasks from here. So if I go to Matrix, I can send Matrix action cards here. And then not only that, if I have a conversation with somebody, right? Let's say, somebody say, could you send me a report? I can actually hover over this ... and create Matrix tasks directly from Teams conversation. And earlier, when we were talking about context switching, that's the thing that we are trying to solve with Matrix here. So, the last thing I want you to have to do is, someone will ask you to do something that you have to open Matrix, find the project, and add the task. Instead, you can do all of those things from one central place. And so that's the whole goal here. And every time you're able to do that, it'll save you time and effort. And then when you have those meetings and you're talking about, hey, we should do X, Y, Z, it's a no-brainer to be able to create all these tasks in Matrix very easily. So I'm not showing it today, but Matrix also integrate with your meetings. So what that means is you can actually add Matrix tab to your Teams meeting, and so you can actually build agenda automatically able to create tasks during your meeting itself. So I'm going to switch back to Matrix for a few more minutes here, and I want to show you what's called the home view. So earlier we talk about reminders all the time, and we talk about due dates. So how does Matrix actually remind you? Well, if you use the home view, so as you can see here, my home view shows the number 84, and when I go to here, it actually shows me the number of alerts that I have that requires my attention. And that's how Matrix send you a reminder. So when I have a task that's due in 2 weeks, when the due date comes, it'll pop up here on top of the list. Now, when I set those recurring reminders, every time those recurring reminders trigger, it shows up here. And that is how you help your brain bypass this urgent and important problem. As I mentioned to you earlier, we tend to go and just work on the things that's last in and first out, right? What that means is you start your day, you open your phone, you look at your email, and you're not looking at the most important email, you're looking at the last email that just came in. Well, to bypass this by creating those recurring reminders, it keeps on coming back and it pops to the top of your list constantly, and it reminds you, just as I mentioned around the goals for 2024. And then we have those short-term goals and the long-term goals, and you're setting recurring reminders on that. It'll constantly remind you to make sure that you do those things. And trust me, the reminders is such a powerful way to be top of mind. And if something's top of mind, it allows you to actually tackle it, because if it's not top of mind, you may not get it done, right? Then it requires your brain to think about it, and we're not good enough for that. And so that's how I'd strongly encourage you to leverage Matrix, and make sure, that is why I want to make sure you set due dates and you set reminders for all of your tasks. So anyways, that's the alert section here. So my goal typically is to go through the alerts here so I can see the things that require my attention. And then when I'm done with that, I can actually clear all notification, and then I'm on the blank slate. And then the next day, I might get reminders again, or due date notifications on the things that are important. So make sure you do that. And then as you can see, Matrix provides a bunch of other views as well. So you can see your agenda, you can see your items. Our search view is actually extremely powerful. It allows you to see everything you have to do across all your projects, and you can build all sorts of filters on it. So as you can imagine, if you're trying to prioritize your tasks for your entire organization, you might want to know, what did so-and-so person work on last quarter? In various types of projects. So Matrix allowed you to actually build reports on all of those using our search view. And we also have workload reports and general reports that allows you to understand exactly what are the things that people are working on in the future. So if you're an agency that needs to prioritize people time, and you want to make sure that the workload is evenly distributed, Matrix has reports that actually allow you to see all of those things. So of course, those are advanced capabilities in Matrix beyond the scope of today's webinar, but I want you to know that all of those are possible. Okay, so let's do a recap real quick. On the left-hand side, your list of projects. In the middle is the quadrant view. You have the item details. The project themselves are customizable. Email management, there's a lot of things you can do. I actually have a webinar dedicated to email management to show you all the things you can do. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check that out. I also have a webinar on using templates in Matrix. So with Matrix, if you build out a matrix with all the tasks in it, you can actually build workflows from it. So that could be everything from employee onboarding or new client onboarding. And so if you have recurring tasks, Matrix will go and allow you to save a ton of time on that. So that's a separate webinar, and you can check that out on our webinar page. But with that, I'm going to jump back to the presentation. So hopefully I've given you a very good overview and deep dive into the basics of Matrix. Now it's on you. If you haven't done it yet, sign up for Matrix and use our app and Teams on Outlook if applicable. Again, they're not required, but if you do use them, definitely install Matrix for that. I feel like the more places, the more the more devices that use Matrix on, the better, because then it allows you to access all your priorities whenever convenient. Again, if you're on the go and you're on mobile, Matrix works just as well. You just go to protamatrix.com, sign in, and everything you have is there. And then if you're brand new to Matrix, I recommend creating at least 3 projects: your personal priorities, your shared team priorities, and key initiative. Now, of course, given the goals for 2024, I recommend that as a 4th project to create. And again, make sure that you set those due dates and so forth. And then if you're planning on using Matrix in a team environment, make sure that you invite the appropriate team members and pitch to them on why it's important to focus on the high impact task. As I mentioned, the teams that have a lot of success, they just project Matrix onto the big screen. And so now you have one project with your team priorities, and it's so crystal clear on what it is that you need to work on, right? And then when you have disagreement, you can talk about it right then, instead of actually postponing all these decisions on deciding what needs to be done now. You can have that hard conversation from the start. So when you create tasks in Matrix, I do recommend due dates. Make sure that you use the appropriate quadrants, right? So then if you have more than 25% of the things in the do now quadrant, then something's wrong, because it means you have everything's on fire, right? So make sure that, when you think about priorities, that you don't overwhelm others and declaring that everything's important and urgent, because if everything's important and urgent, nothing is. And so that's what it means to ruthlessly prioritize. You have to set the clear line in the sand. Okay, these are really critical things we need to work on, and these are things that we can postpone. So tips for being productive in 2024. don't forget your long-term vision. And so this is something that I'm personally aware of myself. I always put my long-term vision at the very top. So when I look at it, I see, okay, this is what I need to work on. So make sure I don't forget that, right? And so I recommend that you do the same. Have a project that track your goals, like I showed you. Track your thoughts and progress through each of those goals. So as I mentioned, that's what the chat section is for. So then, as you're thinking about your goals, as you're working on these things, just send yourself a chat message inside Party Matrix as your notes. And so now later on in 6 months, you can look back and see, okay, this is what I thought about 6 months ago. And it's so important because our state of mind is constantly changing. And I find that for myself, I love it when I can write down my state of mind, and then later on when I'm at a low point, for example, and I'm not achieving the goals that I want, I can look at my notes and see, okay, you know what, this is what I was thinking of back then. This is how I actually can restart my my motivation to be productive, etc. Set reminders so you always come back, and then track the highest impact things. And so this is one of those things where we can easily use Party Matrix to track everything, and you might be tempted to do that. But if you're very new to Party Matrix, only track the highest impact things, and that makes it a little bit easier for you to get started. And then, as I mentioned, write down your anti-goals, things that you vow not to do, right? Or whatever it is that will help you understand and see the differences between your goals and then your anti-goals. So what success with Party Matrix should look like? You have one central place to track all your priorities. Everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. Repetitive procedures are templates ties to save time and effort. And then important emails are prioritized. We just get so many emails. If you prioritize them and you triage them to the appropriate team members, you'll find that Party Matrix will make your day a lot more effective. And then lastly, I just want to say, here's to a productive 2024. You know that we have a lot of webinars and we cover a lot of topics, but because of today's webinar, one thing that I'm offering for our customers is that if you're looking to deploy Party Matrix across your whole organization or department, we're actually giving a free consulting session to help you brainstorm on ways to be more productive. And so if you're interested in that, reach out to me, hi@affluence.com, and we can arrange something like that. But this is one of those things where, if you want to be productive in 2024, then you got to work towards that, right? With that, I conclude my presentation. I'm going to take a look in the chat if there's any questions. Now, of course, you can always send me an email afterwards, hi@affluence.com, and I'd be happy to address them too. Okay, there's a couple of questions here in the chat, so I'm going to start addressing them. If someone send you a message in Teams, how do you attach the message to a task? That's a fantastic question. So let me show you, jump back to Teams here. So as you can see inside Teams, what happens is that every Teams conversation, as you can see here, when someone sends you a message in Teams, right? I showed you earlier, you can create a task from PM item, but the second thing you can do is you can also copy link. So let's say if my manager sends me an email and says, or send me a message in Teams and say, yeah, could you do this or whatever, and I want to attach an existing task, I can click on this ... copy link. And now with that link copied, I can go back to my Party Matrix here. So I'm just going to jump back to an example here. I can paste that link here inside my chat. So I can paste that in the chat, or I can paste that in the resource section. And so I can actually add URL, Teams message. And so what's neat with Teams is that every message inside Teams has a link to it. And so with Party Matrix, you can actually add that as a link here. And when I click on this, it'll jump back to my Microsoft Teams. As you can see, I can attach multiple emails. I can attach multiple files. I can attach multiple documents. Then, of course, I can attach multiple Teams message. And then actually the other thing I want to mention too, since I'm talking about attaching stuff, Party Matrix also has a Chrome extension and an Edge extension. So if you're using another web application, let's just say, you use an accounting app, or you use some sort of work tracking application at your organization, and you want to create a task from that, Party Matrix allows you to convert any web page into a task. And so if you install our extensions, you can just click on this here, and then you can create Party Matrix items directly from any page, any web page. And so if you use SharePoint, again, documents, or Microsoft Word or Google Docs, etc. And so as you can see, you can attach that. So the question is whether you get notifications with respect to Matrix. So there's several ways to get notifications with Matrix. Where we send notifications typically is in the home view. So what that means is you typically have to go into your Matrix to see the notifications, right? And so if you have a task and you're following it with somebody and they assign you something, it would show up here in the alert section. Now, if you use Microsoft Teams, what happens is you can actually install the Matrix chatbot. So to install the Matrix chatbot, all you have to do is go down here and then click on Get More Apps and install Matrix. Now you have to do this separately from the app on the left-hand side. You actually have to install Matrix down here. And when you do, there's the Matrix chatbot. And what the Matrix chatbot does is it sends you notifications. So if someone sends you a task or someone delegates something to you or you set a reminders, it'll pop up here in the chatbot inside Teams. So then you don't have to go into Matrix to see that. So that's how you see the task inside Matrix. What view shows you all the things in the upper left quadrants? So that's a fantastic question. So let's say if you want to see everything that's in Q1. So the way to do that inside Matrix is, let's say you go into Matrix here. That's where you go into the, let's say there's a couple of ways, so I'll show you both. If you go to My Items here, it shows all the tasks that you have, but what you can do is you can actually, actually, no, you do that in the search view here. When you go to the search view, what happens is you click on filters, and then from here, you choose quadrant 1. So if you want to go and see what are all the things you have to do in quadrant 1 across all your project, that's how you would do it. So simply, again, I'll show you again. You go to the search view, click on filters, choose quadrant 1. And then what's neat about this is you can do all sorts of stuff. You can actually go and say, you know, what are the things in quadrant 1 assigned to me or assigned to me and another person. And so this assigned to part actually allows you to have multiple assignees. And so it's an or selector. So essentially find me all the things assigned to this person and this person. And then not only that, you can actually filter it more by the items that you follow. You can filter by dates, you can filter by project tags, etc. So Matrix gives you infinite flexibility when it comes to searching. It's actually really, really powerful if you're trying to find information across specific dates. And then, can you create dependencies between two tasks that are in different projects? So the answer is no in terms of Gantt chart dependencies, but you can actually link tasks together. So that's another really good question. So let me show you how that works. Every task inside Matrix has a link to it, just like every message inside Teams or every email, etc. So earlier I showed you how, let's just say, if you have this task here, right, and let's say you want to do dependencies, you can go to resources, and then you can go link existing item. And then when you do this link existing item, it allows you to choose another Matrix task within the same project. And so from here, you can go and say, you know, a task is blocked by, a task blocked, or a task is caused by, or a task causes. And so that's how you build dependencies. But if you want to link to another item, you can actually do that too by doing the following. So if I go to another project here, I'm going to click on this. I can go and copy link. There's actually a copy link to item. So what this does is actually it copies the link to this item, and actually I can go to this task in a different project and paste it here. If I paste it in the chat section, you can see how it actually, I pasted a link, but the task name itself from the other project shows up. Similarly, I can actually go to here, and then I can actually paste the URL of the task here. And so I'm able to do that. And so now I can actually link the task together to another that's in a totally different project. And so if I click on this, it actually jumps over to the other task in a totally different project. Now, what's really neat is every project also has a link. And so if you go to here, you can actually copy link to project. And if you go back to Matrix, you can actually create a task from that project link. And now what it does is it allows you to create a link to the project itself. So if you have, let's just say if you have a project, if you have a bunch of, if you create a project for every client that you work with, as an example, and then you can create a project of projects. And so from there, you can link to all these other projects as well. And so that allows you to click on this, and it allows you to jump to all the various projects and so forth. Hopefully that answered your question, but that's how you can link these things together. And what's neat about this is if you are in this particular task and this task gets finished, then you'll see this crossed out. Couple of other things, because Protomatrix gives you a lot of flexibility. We also have different ways for you to add information to it, and we try to make that as easy as possible. So as I mentioned earlier, you can have an email that you can forward into Protomatrix from email, but also every project and every quadrant in Protomatrix has an email address too. So you can build all sorts of automation. A couple of other things, Protomatrix has connectors. So if you're looking to connect Protomatrix to other apps, you can actually go to Protomatrix connector. We also have a Gmail integration. We also have Microsoft workflow integration. So if you want to go and build if this then that type of workflow, you do that. And also for enterprise customers, you also have access to Protomatrix in your Microsoft Copilot. So you probably saw that news where Copilot is sort of the AI assistant in Microsoft Teams. Protomatrix is one of the very, very first application that lets you go and leverage Copilot to create tasks from your conversation inside Microsoft. Thank you for the questions here. I appreciate that. If there are any additional questions, you can send them now or send me a message inside Teams. And then, as I mentioned, if you're looking to deploy Protomatrix across your organization or your department, and we'd be happy to give you a free consulting call just to give you ideas on the things that you can do with Protomatrix. We're also leveraging Protomatrix to build out a lot of training materials for specific use cases. So we really want to hear from you and the challenges that you face because we want to help tailor Protomatrix to those specific use cases. Thank you so much for your time today. Happy New Year to all of you, and hopefully you'll become as productive as you'd like to be. And please give me feedback on whether or not that approach helps you manage your goals, because I'm always interested in learning more about that. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.